Welcome to the 26th episode of Speaking of Poetry. I am Rennie McQuilkin, publisher of Antrim House Books, whose authors are featured in this series. Today I am delighted to be joined by Melissa Crogan. Born in Washington, D.C., Melissa Crogan is an award-winning poet and artist whose work has appeared in numerous journals and publications. Her novel, The Tracking Heart, published in 2012, has received critical plaudits from Kirkus Reviews and has had a very wide and enthusiastic readership. A former editor at Boulevard, an English professor, and a poet in the schools in Connecticut, Crogan holds master's and PhD degrees from the University of Pennsylvania. Melissa, her husband, and her 2 dogs and cat divide their time between Simsbury and Mackinac Island, where they are often joined by their family. Welcome to Speaking of Poetry, Melissa Crogan. We look forward to hearing your poems and seeing some of your artwork.
Very kind words, Rennie. I'm glad to be here. As a poet-painter, it sometimes happens that while I'm writing, I sense the paintbrush moving subterraneously along and lying in wait, as it were, for me to finish a draft or 2. And then I hightail it to the studio and make the companion painting. Or the reverse occurs, as in this situation. The painting came first. Childhood. A woman who drops by my studio says to me every so often, "That childhood painting, it's not sad, but it bothers me. In it, the trees churn, the child's eyebrows are stilts falling, and clearly the kid is engaged in something beyond our ken. I do like it, but it bothers me. Her eyes enlarge as she speaks. Her mouth forms a stern margin. As for me, I can hardly contain my glee, for what is art if it does not make your eyeballs pop?" Not long ago, I was asked to write a poem and make a painting in preparation as a lead-in for a movie film series. At first, I was unhappy with this job because I really don't create well on demand. And then I found common ground with my subject, the self-portrait. Van Gogh did plenty of them, and Picasso was no slouch himself. Rembrandt was the king, tallying up some 60 mirror images and yet managing to toggle back and forth between other subjects and himself. Monet, they all did it. But Frida, well, the self-portrait was her game. She was the queen of self-portrait painters with more than 50 images of her comely face and form. But beauty belies your anguish, Frida Kahlo. You painted your heart out, quite literally. See, memory of the heart. And if that sword left nothing but a gaping hole in a canvas or 2, you were strong. You picked up your beating heart, so casually left in the corner, in the dirt, and painted it back in. And such a big heart it was, painting Diego many times over, his fine, fat self, lascivious monkeys, too, larger-than-life parrots, these devoted companions framing your face. And not to forget the letter to a dubious lover and love of your looming family, mother, father, and grandparents branched out on the tree of humanity. After the accident, your mother fixed a mirror over your bed and gave you paints and brushes. I think of you today, Frida, for when I was a child, I was sick in bed, once for 7 months, and then again 5 more. I had a parrot then. His name was Pirate. And he used to love to sit on my head. his talons sharp on my scalp, but I couldn't bear to hurt his feelings and tell him to fly away. Once I did, and he fluttered to the bedpost, regarding me with a reproachful eye. Like you, Frida dear, my parrot inspired me, and my mother gave me paper and pencil, told me to draw and write a story. But my months in bed were nothing like what you went through, and your output was dazzling. There are people who get confused by this. They think, self-portrait, the solipsistic artist. But no, truth is we are our own handiest models. Good for introspection too. The self-portrait? Why, it's the cheapest way to paint the face. No model fees and no worries to plan the when and where of studio time. Frida knew this. As for me, I have but a handful of self-studies. Frida's advantage? She painted herself in her 20s, 30s, 40s. I painted a few back then, but mostly I've missed the boat on young faces, unless I make things up. Go wrinkle-free, every artist's prerogative. Frida knew this. Beautiful robes had she, elaborate garments in decorative detail attending her crippled, tempestuous life, body pierced by a metal rail, body pierced by betrayal. But traveling beyond the paltry self, your wounded stag, your tree of hope keeps strong, self-portrait with a doll, the child you never had. And finally in 1950, after 7 operations in 1 year, there were the words you painted, Viva la vida, anguish and art, pain and paint. Make art make you whole again. Frida knew this. To turn to Mackinac Island in the titular poem of my book. This is an island where no cars are allowed, so you wake in the morning hearing clip-clop of horses and the foghorn. It's a remarkable place. Cliff Walk. To the end of the lawn, to the cliff's edge, my sister and I marched, rascally, bike trick girls, mere slips of youth when we stood arm in arm, swaying backwards, allowing the wind to push us just so far. We talked of growing up and how it must be to marry, how it must hurt to give birth. In the sun, I can feel how it was early those Mackinac mornings, a careful bath of light washing our thighs and bellies, and the breeze lifting our flannel nightgowns, ballooning them high above our legs. We were blooms, we were planted. Forward and back we bent with the wind and sun, great pretending, for at heart we were shy of fixed roots and fertile future. This island where I grew up was like a second paradise to me, still is. But I often think that places of great beauty hold the potential of danger too. Reckless. Walked out in the deep snow, missed a step, and was gone. A sweet boy he was on a winter walk to the edge of the ramparts of Fort Mackinac. And there was another boy, this one from an old island family, went out in a small sailboat in bad weather that got worse, and he was gone. What about those women? They didn't really know the island, everyone said so. Over the cliff in their snowmobile. Yes, but that other guy, you say, trying to get back in the dark, going home to Mackinac on his snowmobile, he knew the lay of the lake. And still he missed the safety of the Christmas tree trail where the ice is frozen solid. What was his state of mind? What we really wonder is, where is the line between a little reckless abandon and flat out reckless? Living on an island with the startling beauty and excitement we inherited from the voyageurs, the lusty fur traders, and maybe an island spirit or two, there is the lure to gallop your horse under a blood-red moon along the runway at the airport, or to ride a bike fast down the bluffs and still pedaling go flying straight off Yoder Dock, wham, into the lake. Okay, not everyone's cup of tea, but you get my gist. How to, without dying. Can be done, I think, with luck and a little caution until the baker says it's time. The Little Brown. In the 1960s, the Little Brown on Mackinac made us squeal when it swooped down the cedar hallway, finding its way once again out of the bat closet. You may wonder what kind of house has a bat closet, and I will tell you that it was a perfectly nice old house. Only the bats like to come in from the eaves and take their ease in this one closet in my sister's room. Occasionally one found its way out of the closet and into the house, whereupon my brother Jock would sneak up on it perched on the wall and slam an empty trash can down over its earless body, would slide a magazine page underneath and take the whole business gently out into the night, releasing it into the dark paths between the stars. Except for those times when he did not do this, when he laughed wildly and told us to follow him and an unlucky bat trapped in the can as we trooped down the hill to the cavernous Grand Hotel, where to our little girl horror and delight, he released the prisoner into the ballroom, causing ladies and gents to duck their heads and then to shriek and to cry, foul. Poor little Browns, I realize now. To have this odd circumstance befall them when all they ever did was keep the biting black horseflies off us and our beast in harness, keep the streets and bluffs free of mosquitoes, poor little Browns, dangerously reduced in numbers here and on the mainland of America. I was looking forward to going to a play in New York, and it starred a wonderful British actor, Ralph Fiennes, until a problem arose. And this was a problem of a purely contemporary sort. For solace, I decided to turn to the past, and in so doing, I discovered another star who helped me through. The faith healing incident. Your identity is in jeopardy, the letter began. When you bought that ticket to see the faith healer, your credit card, email, and phone number were accessed. A third-party criminal hacker, the letter said. We regret this problem, but you still have a ticket to your Broadway show. In moments like this, it's hard not to consider the lives of those long ago. For instance, there was Madame La Framboise of Mackinac, who learned to read but left nothing in writing beyond her own X mark. Superior negotiator, chief fur trader of the Old Northwest, she kept her status intact even as she signed on to be part of the Astor Fur Company, the big shots from Philadelphia. And what of her identity? She kept it a fluid thing, She was Ottawa, she was French, she was Canadian, she was English-speaking, French-speaking, and dozens of Indian dialect-speaking. Every day of her life, she wore the Ottawa tribe dress and lived first in a teepee in Grand Haven and then forevermore in a fine house her shrewd business head wrought for her on Mackinac. "We need to report this incident," the letter said, "your possible identity theft. Oh, won't you give me a ticket to your show, La Framboise? The A shapes of the teepees on the beach, your white house on the street behind, and you beyond such solid homes, awash in the myriad colors of red, there. And the day is done on the silken lake in your long boat heaped with furs, cold against your legs and hand firm on the paddle, turning." Another fascinating character, a New Englander, Margaret Fuller, became friends with La Framboise when she went to Mackinac to do research for her book titled Summer on the Lakes. This was the first popular travel book by an American. This poem, I like to think, is testament to how research can lead to adventure. Traveling alone. Rare for a lady of the 19th century, Margaret Fuller was that passenger from Boston, the lady with the voyageurs in the longboat, oars in the water to Sault Ste. Marie. She was not yet famous, though already Emerson reveled at her intellect, besotted with it, really. They were best friends, and she the editor of their fabled Dial, that transcendental journey that would draw in Thoreau and many more of the palm thinkers. She left all that and traveled alone to the wilderness, wild to go west, young woman, and found herself note-taking late by the fire, her journal fed by the ribald stories of the oarsmen of the old Northwest, and the Indians and the fur traders humming alive on Mackinac. Margaret's journey to Michigan came 7 years before she died at sea with her new husband and infant in her arms. But there she was in that earlier year in a longboat in risky waters, and this was where she had a revelation. Life, its gorgeous storms, the teary relief at seeing her boon companions once she got back safely to Mackinac, that was good and well. But now she was ruined. She had learned the plain excitement of being on one's own where fear is undiluted, and freedom too. This one is about a dear friend of mine. It takes place in the Tull Meadow Forest of Simsbury. The Life of Poe. My feet find their slippers, and I open the door for Poe, my basset hound, to charge outside, his due diligence of checking every nook and cranny for the interlopers last night, the stealth visitors who lapped at the pond and ferreted out the last scrumptious bits of fall greens. Fox, rabbit, deer, and fisher cat have enjoyed the four corners of our yard. Poe, in the parlance of top security bureaus, is my sniffer dog. Nose flaps going 100 miles an hour, bloodshot eyes rimmed in Cleopatra kohl, silken ears drooping to the ground in a purpose meant for drag and pick-up scent, his tail an upward staccato of intense dog happiness, a meditation, a mantra in motion that I do not take for granted, especially since Once I almost lost him. He and I were surprised by 3 bear cubs crossing the trail in front of us. Poe tore after them, disappearing into the tall meadow forest, baying his heart out, and I yelling, "Come back!" No sight of him, and his song stopped dead. I could hear milkweeds burst. I could hear stones talk. Then, behind me, a sound. I whirled, and there, my little hound, scuttling out of the wood, chastened, tail between his legs, and brow wrinkled in thought. If he saw the great mother, he never said a word. Pay attention. From where they sit, the river is a snake that swallowed several people. That's how it looks from here. And she's glad to be so high, sitting in the plain beside her son, who makes up good stories, but has his teacher worried. She says he doesn't pay attention. Out the window, the clouds line up like glass milk bottles. But things do not stay neat, and these are clouds that shift and break wide open. Her son sees something else. Cheek red against the pane, he describes to her the fight. It's a snowball fight, and the sky otters have just hit those big bully clouds. Bullseye! She is looking, but cannot see beyond the milk and how it spilled at dinner. His father shouting, milk flood, everything is ruined." Do you see the sky otters? Her boy's cheeks are hot and patched. They ride on their bellies and never come to earth. She thinks of sky and earth and blood between. Milk of mother's kindness, let her listen to her son. Let him sketch out their place. Odd as otters on their bellies, but safely, swiftly, bullseye, down to earth. In this poem, I want to say that it's part of a painting. It's part of my Mother America series, a group of mostly 5-foot tall canvases begun immediately after the 9/11 tragedies. In the way of artistic evolution, the combination of poem and painting, and they are together on the same painting, came about after, 9 years after I started the composition. I hammered the painting right onto the canvas. And to me, this is testimony to my interest in text and image together, and to the way people used to share news in the world by posting a notice, a public notice, on a tree in a village in New England and anywhere in the world. American Harvest. When the tall buildings toppled, the Vanity Fair and complacent smiles of a nation were toppled too. Fear blew through the hollow corn husks, and the wind was endless. But eventually someone said, "Thanksgiving is coming as it always does, and we must get about our business." And then the people I saw began to pick up the pieces and to prepare the squashes and pumpkins and spices. Everywhere there was a fever of domesticity. Everyone was a seamstress tightening the threads of a nation. On Thanksgiving morning, I went for a walk in the country, up a rutted path, never meaning to stumble, but I did. I wrecked myself on the hollow ground of fear again. In this place, I walked for miles. I walked until I got to the strange yellow fields of America, where the corn is so bright it hurts the eyes, and each harrowed field this year is a harvest of flags. I'm going to depart from the poetry painting model for this next poem and read something about poetry and music. No longer alone. It was his idea to introduce a choral, an unprecedented act, this fusion of voice, string, and wind. It became a joint endeavor when he set Schiller's verse to music, obeying the poet's injunction to go in search of Elysium and to go intoxicated with joy. As Beethoven made this composition his quest, he probably knew he was dying, and the old, disquiet, resurging, in manic glee imagined the finale of his Ninth Symphony as an Elysium of words that forever validates the way his movement enters ours. Live longer. I've been searching and have found a secret that will solve a persistent desire: how to extend the day of our lives. Here it is. Move to the island of occasional northern lights. Say it out loud: Aurora Borealis. It gives a charge. Might as well say it again as you hop on your bike and head for the shore road. That daytime of your life, it will be your friend in North Country. Walk until sunset at 10 p.m. and you will feel like you get to live 10 times 10. For time expands in the sweet, late light of Mackinac. Thank you, Rennie, and everyone for watching.
And Melissa, thank you. You've taken us on a magical mystery tour of Mackinac Island and Frida Kahlo and a number of other subjects. I see you on that wonderful island in Lake Huron, recklessly descending hills, climbing to fabulous heights, and introducing us to fabulous people, Poe the Basset Hound, not least among them. So thank you for that marvelous tour. We should all go to Mackinac Island and leave our cars behind as quickly as possible. And thank you, Ken Picard and Karen Handville, who make this program possible. If you would like to learn more about Melissa's work and see samples from her book, please visit the Antrim House website, antrimhousebooks.com. You may also be interested in other Antrim House poets whose lives and works are described on the website. Goodbye for now until next month and the 27th installment of Speaking of Poetry.